All right, let's talk about court storming in college basketball. Now, this isn't a new discussion by any means, but it's been reignited over the past few days because of an incident this past weekend between Wake Forest and Duke. Wake Forest beat Duke on their home court 82-79 on Saturday, and thousands of fans stormed the court. Now, the problem isn't that fans storm the court. We see this all the time in college basketball, which we'll get into. The problem was that they ended up hitting Duke's 7-foot center, Kyle Filipowski, and he got hurt. He hurt his knee, and he walked off the court, and after the game, he was quoted as saying that he thought it was intentional. Now, Kyle is a huge part of Duke's team. He's their leading scorer and rebounder, and Duke is projected to be the number 3 seed in March Madness this year. Obviously, they have several games left in the regular season in the ACC tournament, and missing him for an extended period of time could be detrimental to their team's success. So it's unfortunate that something happened after the game. Now, a lot of people are analyzing the footage from the top down or side angles or slow-mo and talking about how they think Kyle pushed someone first or tripped someone. But that doesn't really matter to me. I take a little bit of that out of context here because when you think about it, the players are emotional at that point in time, right? They just lost a big game. Fans are running onto the court, thousands of them. You look up and there's people running directly at you. Most of you, including myself, would stick your hands up. So I'm not going to go and say that he pushed players. But in the video, you can directly see him get pushed in the back by a fan. Now, that's off limits. I think everyone, including Wake Forest fans, would say that shouldn't be allowed. And if someone does that, they should be punished. But I've also seen a lot of media members talk about court storming over the last few days. And it feels like everyone's taking a position on this. And this is one of the things that I hate about sports media is that you have to pick a side. Because ultimately, there's nuance to this situation. And the answer is usually somewhere in between. And I'll give you a couple examples. I saw Jay Billis on TV saying that if they wanted to get rid of this, they could just let everyone storm the court and then put every single person in handcuffs. And you wouldn't see anyone storm the court again. I don't agree with that. I think court storming is fundamentally one of the best parts of college basketball. It makes it different than professional basketball because fans have passion. They want to support their school, and it's a camaraderie thing, right? You're supporting your school, you're supporting the players, and you're supporting something bigger than yourself, which we don't really have in the professional leagues until you get to the finals or something like that. The second suggestion I saw was from the athletic director at the University of Alabama. And he said that if you wanted to do away with this, you should just make that team forfeit the game. And then we wouldn't have it again. The schools would get in line and they wouldn't allow this. Again, I don't agree with that. I think court storming should be allowed. But I do think that we can make a few changes to make this a little bit better for the players that are on the court itself. Number one, the NCAA failed here. Just like everything else, the NCAA left it up to the schools and the conferences to be able to do these reprimands by themselves. And what we've seen is that other conferences outside of the ACC have put rules in place to financially penalize teams that let fans storm the court. The SEC, for example, has a fining system in place where if you storm the court, your school is going to be fined $100,000 for the first instance. If you do it again, you're going to be fined $250,000. If you do it a third time, and every time after that, you're going to be fined $500,000. Now, part of the problem may be that the ACC doesn't have this system in place. I've seen many people talking about that over the last few days. But I also don't really think it matters because we still see this in the SEC all the time, not only with basketball, but with football as well. Instead, I think we can change a couple of things. Number one, I think we can reduce the number of times that people are storming the court. ESPN did this study over the last few days where they looked at all the college basketball games over the last few years. And what they found was really interesting. ESPN found that on average this college basketball season, they say that 3 court stormings have happened every single week. Now, I don't know about you guys, but court storming used to be reserved for beating a top 5 team or a rival or winning a big game. It didn't happen every single week and multiple times a week. So it's become much more common over the last few years, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. It should be reserved for those special moments because we don't want it to lose its luster either. Number 2, I think the schools could hire a little bit more security. I saw Colin Cowherd talking about this, and he said that they should double their security from 15 to 30 security guards for each team. And I agree with him. He was getting a little bit of grief online, but I agree with him because I don't expect those security guards to stop kids from storming the court. Again, these security guards in most instances are making like $10 to $15 an hour, and they're the guys wearing yellow coats. They're not going to stop, nor should they be asked to stop all of the people from doing that. But they can be used to protect players like Kyle Filipowski leaving the court. I think that's an important thing. And then number 3, if you think about the clock, one of the things that was most unfortunate about this situation with Wake Forest and Duke was that if you look at the clock, when the clock hit 0, the fans are already on the court. They were on the court with time still left on the clock because the ball was in play and the game was essentially over. Now, it may have been 0.1 seconds or 0.2 seconds, but they were on the court before the game ended. So I think what these schools should do, one of the best suggestions that I've seen over the last few days, is implement a shot clock. Just put 10 seconds up on the clock and let the players get off the court for those 10 seconds and then have everyone storm the court and celebrate with the team and the fans. I think that's a fine solution, and I think it will solve most of the problems, probably 95% of the problems that we've seen in college basketball over the last few years. But the most important thing here are the players. Let's be honest. People come to the games to see the players. You have to protect them. The players can't go out on the court thinking that they're going to get hurt at the end of a game because some drunk fan or some rowdy fan decides to push them when they're happy that their team won. You can't have it, and it's something that needs to improve. I think the NCAA should have stepped up sooner than they have in the past on other issues. You can't just leave everything to the individual conferences, because what we've seen is that the conferences don't normally take this as seriously. I mean, the ACC doesn't even have a policy in place. They're not fining schools. They're not reprimanding them in any capacity for what happened on Saturday night. Again, Kyle Filipowski and the Duke team is not completely innocent here. But at the end of the day, a fan pushed a player. You can't allow that, and there needs to be better policies in place to make sure that it doesn't happen again in the future.